Hey, you're considering setting up a limited liability company? Well, before you do so, watch this video because I'm going to be covering the 6 common mistakes people make when creating an LLC. All right, let's get started. Okay, so when it comes to setting up an LLC, I know there's a ton of information out there on the internet, and there's a lot of people that have ways in which you should set up your LLCs that they say, oh, there's a lot of benefit from going here, or there's a lot of benefit from doing these things. Well, in this video, I just want to break it down and make it really simple for you. So when it comes to setting up your LLC, you just go through this checklist and say, hey, I've nailed these, and then you'll know you're on the right path when it comes to setting up your limited liability company. Take it for somebody who's been doing this for over 22 years. We've set up tens of thousands of limited liability companies for people just like you. And so we have quite a bit of experience in doing this, and we've seen where the mistakes have come in time and time again. And I guarantee you, after watching this video, you won't be making those same mistakes. All right, so what is the first mistake that I find people make when it comes to setting up their limited liability company? That is picking the wrong state, okay, to set up their business under. Okay, what do we mean by that? Well, as you know, you can create a limited liability company in all 50 states. So let's assume that I have a business in Texas, right? I want to set up an LLC there because my business is involved in auto repair, or maybe I own investment real estate in Texas and I want to create an LLC to protect my investment real estate that's located there. So I on the internet, I've been researching limited liability companies, and I see a lot of people talking about Nevada, Wyoming, Delaware, and you think, hey, these benefits sound awesome. I think I'm going to set up my LLC in that state. That's where you go wrong. Okay, so when you're creating your limited liability company, you have to determine, where am I conducting business? So if you're running an active business in Texas, you own assets in Texas, then you want to ensure that the LLC you're setting up for those types of activities will be set up in the state where the activity is located or where the investment is taking place. Because otherwise, if you were to choose one of these other states, Wyoming, Nevada, Delaware, you're going to have to turn around and foreign file it back into Texas in order, in my example, that is, to make sure that you're compliant with the state of Texas for doing business in that state. So you don't get any benefit by setting up an entity in Nevada and just turn around and foreign file it in Texas. So that's the first mistake we see. The second mistake I see with people creating limited liability companies has to do with the resident agent. Okay, resident agent. What do I mean by that? Do not be your own resident agent when you set up your limited liability company. You see, the resident agent, their position in the company is to ensure that if there's anybody that needs to get a hold of your company, that is the state where you've set up the business in, or a creditor, they're going to serve the registered agent with the notice of whatever it happens to be. Maybe it's your renewal or franchise tax, or it's the federal government, or it's a creditor. They're going to serve the registered agent, and that registered agent will turn around and inform you that, hey, you've received this important mail. Now, why am I telling you not to be your own registered agent or resident agent, depending on the state? Well, it comes back to this. Many times I found with people who create LLCs, they move, all right? And when they change their address, they forget to update the state. If they're serving as their own resident agent, registered agent, then what will happen is those notices go to the old address, to the person that's now living in that house, and they never get forwarded on to you, and the entity then can possibly go into default status and be revoked. That's a big problem that we have. The second problem with being your own agent for your company is that people know now that it's your company. And so if you're looking to build an anonymity shield around yourself, or you just don't want people knowing where you live, putting yourself down as a resident agent or registered agent on your LLC is defeating that purpose. So I do not like it when people serve in that capacity. Leave it to a professional organization to take on that responsibility. All right, the third thing that I find is using a home address as your business address for the LLC. Okay, this is a problem for a couple of different reasons. Number one, when you list your home address on your limited liability company for its business address, well, you could then be creating an issue for yourself with the county in which your property is located in, or the city limits, because then there's a presumption made that you're doing business in that county or doing business in that city, and then they want to get paid taxes on any income you're making there. The reality may be that your business is in a different county or city altogether, but since you didn't have an address at the time in which you created the LLC, you use your home address. The second reason why I don't like using home addresses, because of your home address, and now your customers, your tenants, the people that your company is going to be dealing with know where you live. And if you have a disgruntled individual that you've worked with that's not happy with the service they received, or they're just a little crazy, they could end up at your house one evening and cause some problems for you. So let's keep our personal address off of our entity. And the third reason why I don't like doing this is because this is your business address, right? It's not you do not want your personal address there, because as your business grows, maybe you want to establish credit for your business. And if you're going to try to start building business credit, which I think can be very beneficial for business owners to have business credit, having your home address is not going to help you build that business credit profile. You actually need a business address. Now, there's lots of different options out there, from virtual business addresses or different types of suites you can use that are not very expensive, but they give your business that business appearance. That I'm not going to say, I'm saying legitimate, but I don't mean it that way. What I mean is that it gives it more that impression that, hey, this is a business that operates out of as a physical location. Maybe you already have one, you're leasing space. Whatever it is, avoid your personal address, home address. Now, the fourth thing you want to make sure is that you choose the right entity. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Choosing the right entity setup. When it comes to creating a limited liability company, there's two different entity types you can create. You can set it up as a manager managed, or you can establish it as a member managed LLC. Now, here's the thing. If you want to build anonymity and you don't want people to know that you're associated with your business, then that means you're going to use a blocker entity to hold your LLC. So an example would be this. I create an LLC here. I'm setting this LLC up here in Utah, but I don't want people to look at that entity and know that I'm an owner. So I'm going to establish a Wyoming blocker entity here for anonymity purposes. So when I set up this Utah LLC, I need to establish this Utah LLC as a member managed limited liability company. It has to be set up as member managed so I can indicate that the Wyoming LLC is the member manager. That's how you create anonymity for your businesses that you're setting up using a Wyoming blocker entity. But that only works if you choose the right entity setup. So when you're filing, many states ask you, is this going to be a member managed or a manager managed LLC? And if you chose manager managed LLC, then your information, because you're the manager, will appear on the Secretary of State. Not only will your name appear there, but your home address will appear there. So choose the right setup. If you want anonymity, it's going to be member managed. Now, if you're not concerned about anonymity because the business is an active business and you're going to be involved with it and you're doing a lot of marketing, it's, your persona is going to be tied to this business, then I would look at creating a manager managed LLC for my setup. Okay. Don't make it member managed. I don't need people to know that I'm the member and the owner of the company. I'll just say, hey, listen, I run this business. This is the person in charge. The other benefit of making it a manager managed versus a member managed in this context for your active business is that if you want to bring in other investors into your business in the future, you can do so without bringing them in at the management level. You can bring them in as an ownership, but not as a manager. So I prefer manager managed in that context. Okay, the fifth mistake that you need to be aware of is the tax status. Make sure you're electing the appropriate tax status for your LLC. Now, there are 4 different ways in which you can tax a limited liability company. You can elect to treat it as a C corporation for federal tax purposes. You can elect to treat it as an S corporation for federal tax purposes. It can be a partnership, okay, or it can be a disregarded entity, okay, when it comes to taxes. So this is an election you make when you obtain your EIN number. Whatever election you make needs to be representative of your business. So if you had a passive business such as investing in the stock market or owning rental real estate, you're never going to want to choose to have your business set up as a C Corp or an S Corp. It just doesn't make sense to do that. Okay, whereas if it was an active business and your business is, as I talked about earlier, repairing vehicles, well, in that case, you definitely want to choose either an S Corp or a C Corp from a federal tax standpoint to how to treat that business. And you would never want to be a disregarded or partnership because you're just going to pay more in tax. So you have to pay particular attention to this to make sure you're setting it up the right way with the IRS to ensure that your taxes are minimized. Now, this last mistake that goes off of this tax status election is drafting an operating agreement. An LLC, I'm just going to put OPG, an operating agreement. So after you've set up your structure, it's been filed with the Secretary of State, you need to actually draft an operating agreement. And there's a lot of misconception out there. People think, well, if it's just me, do I really need an operating agreement? Tell me how to run my business. You do. Okay, because if you're ever involved in a lawsuit, that's what's going to save you. And that's why it's important that you invest into creating a good operating agreement that has sufficient asset protection provisions in there to keep the creditors away from your company, away from your assets, and away from your ownership interest. More importantly, you want to make sure that whatever tax election you make, if you're an active business, that the right tax clauses are built into your operating agreement. If they're not in there, or the wrong ones are in there, then what can happen is if you're audited, the tax election you made that you thought was going to benefit you can be taken away by the IRS and you can be pushed into a much higher tax bracket that is more favorable to them. That's why putting together that operating agreement, I think, is so important. Hey, those are my 6 main points, mistakes that people make when they create limited liability companies. I hope you got something out of that. And if you want to learn more about limited liability companies and other types of business entities, I'd like to invite you to our free one-day tax and asset protection workshop that we teach here at Anderson. We do it every Saturday. It's a phenomenal event. You come to that event, I guarantee you're going to learn tax strategies that you've never been exposed to before, and you're going to learn ways to structure your entities to get more out of them. More importantly, you're going to get your questions answered. Hey, if you've been wondering about how to do this, we've been teaching this stuff for over 22 years to investors and business owners just like yourself. We know what we're doing here, and I guarantee you'll leave the event in a better position than when you're started. It's absolutely free. Check out the show notes. There's a link in there. Just click on it, get registered, and I look forward to seeing you there.